Welcome back to Snap Publishing, those of you familiar with what we do here, and welcome those of you new to Snap Publishing, where we discuss the secrets of Edward Leeds Skelton's Coral Castle and how it pertains to things biblical, to the periodic table of elements, and the graphic that I have constructed where we blend King Solomon's Temple, King David, King Solomon's Temple, with the biblical narrative and DNA, the double helix, and the zodiac according to Genesis chapter 49 in the Bible, and Jacob's 12 sons and one daughter. Okay, what we were discussing, or the topic of discussion, is Nebuchadnezzar's dream, what I call the metal man image, the book of Daniel, and Goliath, and how Nebuchadnezzar's version is the earth and the solar system back when Lucifer and God were simpatico, they were friends, before the fall of Lucifer. And the Goliath image and the description of Goliath is our current solar system arrangement. So if you look at Uranus and its strange axis, you figure things out where Eli, when he broke his neck in the book of, I believe, 1 Samuel, this represents him breaking his neck, him falling over backwards and breaking his neck, represents it's a type of Lucifer falling, the fall of Lucifer being reenacted many years later. And Uranus's strange sideways axis tells us how things were before they were today. If you look at the periodic table and think of it in terms of this, okay, this dial caliper opens and closes. Okay, and if you look at the periodic table, that center gap, that big gap between the S block elements and the P block elements, these are the D block elements. This tells you that back in the day, it was narrow and it widened. This is the Pacific Ocean, believe it or not. So when that all occurred, that was, we could call it the flood of Noah, the pre-Adamite world, the Younger Dryas event, call it what you will. The periodic table was designed slightly different than it is today, or massively different. But that center area, as it expanded, we get to where the center line of the temple is in the arrangement that it is today. So when you look at the descriptions of these two images, Goliath's description and the Nebuchadnezzar's nightmare, we notice the head of gold was at one time real pure gold. That was Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, that was when Lucifer was running the show. It was a patriarchal system. Okay, so, and there again, that could be a relative term, but I will stick with that. I'm going to hold fast with that description. In today's world, today's solar system arrangement is more of a matriarchal system. It's more biologically friendly. So if you notice where gold is, if you turn the graphic, okay, here's the graphic. If you notice where gold is, it's on the outer edge. Okay, it used to be in the center. Now it's pushed out to the side. All right. But back in the old arrangement, that northern location was gold. It was what they call a golden age. So today, it's described as being brass. Why? Because brass is an amalgamation of copper and zinc. Okay, it's a watered down version of gold. You could call it a form of fool's gold, whatever you want, however descriptive you want to get. I'll just stick with it's brass and it's kind of a knockoff gold. Okay. It looks like gold when you polish it up. It looks great, but and it has very good qualities and properties to it, very important ones that gold doesn't have. Okay, they're each unique. One is not better than the other. They have their uses. Okay, so now when you get in the description of the Nebuchadnezzar's image, you got the head of gold, chest and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of brass, the 2 legs of iron, and the feet of iron and clay. I was getting kind of tongue-tied because I knew what I wanted to say, I just didn't know how to say it. But if you look at ancient mirrors, they were copper and silver. And that's your Mercury-Venus relationship. Okay? So your sun would be the brass, but your mirror would be the silver and copper, which is a very important thing. It seems insignificant, but in biblical terms, it's very important. Because now you're going from, if you're saying, oh, Venus is brass, you're technically wrong. Because Venus is the belly and thighs. The head is the brass. Okay? Do these two contain copper? Yes, they do. Okay, are they connected? Yes, they are. But they're separate by the silver, and the silver is clearly Mercury. So this gets into the relationship that I talk about where Earth is like the neutral center position, the strong ass between two burdens, so to speak. And we'll get into that later on, what that means. So you have your Mars on one side and your Venus on the other. Okay, and Earth is trapped in between these two warring parties. Okay, it's the same as saying you got the two parents and the child. All right, so you got mom and dad not getting along, the devil and God not getting along, Adam and Eve not getting along. It's always somebody in between these two forces. All right, so I just want to leave you with that understanding of where we are with the head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, and legs of iron, feet of iron and clay, and how they pertain to the old system and the system of today. And the rocky planets, I'll get into very quickly, they don't belong where they are. Okay, they got dragged over here. They may have been like you see the Galilean moons are for us today. That is how these rocky planets, their value, their place value back before Lucifer fell, as when we were moons of these great gas giants, okay? And the sun wasn't the big player that it is today, okay? Neptune was the king. That's who Nebuchadnezzar represents. And that N can turn to Z. That's why Nebuchadnezzar's name has an N and a Z. There's certain letters in the English alphabet, like the H. If you turn the H one way, it's an I. This represents clockwise and counterclockwise motion. Okay? So our place value today, we're kind of players now. We're planets. But we didn't start out that way. We were like the Galilean moons. Okay? So you have to understand the Bible covers a lot of time, a massive amount of time. Okay? And the pre-Adamite world is before Adam and Eve. And the beings that were with Lucifer, 1/3 of them fell and 2/3 of them stayed on God's side. Who were these beings? Well, they were humans, but not as we know us today. Okay? And Adam and Eve came along. This is possibly the separation of men and women from each other. It used to be more a hermaphroditic relationship where they were combined. Okay, and this is why Eve was taken from Adam's rib, which was later corrected with Jesus coming from Mary. Okay, that was the change up Like I say, you have to know that God is fair to both North and South, patriarchy and matriarchy. And the wrongs of the past get righted through the understanding of how the Bible is really written. Okay, Eve was taken from Adam. Okay, the first woman came from a man, and women are very mad about that. Okay, well, that situation got righted later on when God said, you know what, I'm going to send my son by way of the woman. And it was predicted when Adam and Eve ate the fruit, God said that he was going to bring the deliverer through the seed of the woman. Okay, so we'll just leave that there and move on. So what we want to get into and discuss next is Jacob and his mother attempting to deceive the father, Isaac, into believing Jacob was actually Esau. And his voice gave him away. Okay? He got him on the food, he got him on the smell, he got him on the hairy arm, because they put like animal skin on his arms. All right? So what is this all talking about? Guess what? The feet of iron and clay is where? Well, if you got Mercury, Venus, and Mars, you got to have who? The Earth and the Moon. Iron and clay. Okay? So the Earth-Moon system is between the Venus-Mars thing. All right? So if you look at the Greek legends, they talk about, oh, Athena, she's the female Mars. And the god of war, what was it, Hermes? Yeah, Hermes, right? Aries, rather. I'm sorry, Aries. Hermes would be Mercury. But Aries, thank you, Mr. Editor, and Athena are opposites of each other. And you're the neutral party. And this is the kind of stuff that John Anthony West struggled with, I will guarantee you, because it's a very difficult concept. You're like, the feet of iron and clay, what would that be? Well, it's obviously Earth, but there's more to it. You're containing the moon in there. It's the Earth-Moon system and the Mars-Venus-Earth-Moon connection. By the way, that's all a type of, if you look at the temple, the brass altar and the 2 seas of brass, because now you have a double image. So in the original temple, there's only 1 sea of brass. Okay, let me see, you're going in, facing west. So east, west, north. It'd be on the south side. There was only 1. But when you double the image, you get the 2. And that represents the H2O molecule. Okay? And it represents more than just the H2O molecule. But if you go the other way, now you have the altar, the brass altar where they sacrifice, and the 2 pillars. So now you're going this way in a V. Now you're going this way in an A. Where do you think that compass and square comes from? All right, and the brass altar never leaves. It's always the central position. So you're getting the H2O one way, and on the other, you're getting something else. We'll get into that later. So anyway, that is the dream Nebuchadnezzar has. All right, and it represents the solar system's order in 2, I guess you'd call them epochs or epochs or timelines, okay, where things were one way many years ago. And this is why physicists are struggling. Oh my God, how did this particle go back in time? Because at the subatomic, that represents your past. That represents when Lucifer was the good guy and everything was groovy, okay? And that tiny little system in that atom remembers all that. It doesn't live by our rules today because we're under Goliath. When you get into who Goliath is, okay, Nebuchadnezzar's dream is Lucifer before the fall is the patriarchy. All right? After the fall and in today's arrangement, that's the matriarchy. You're under a matriarchal system today. That's why anything a guy does, it's working against you. You can't do anything as a guy today without somebody fighting you. You dig a ditch, it wants to fill in. It wants to self-heal. Okay? It's Eve fighting Adam all the way. Any guy who does hard work, offshore oil rigs, onshore oil rigs, building oil rigs, building ships, any of that heavy lifting, it ain't easy. Right? But the natural thing, the feminine order that this, well, it might be the whole universe, but for sure our solar system, possibly even our galaxy, it's an electric-based system. It's based on the electron. Okay? Now, Lucifer can play both sides of that fence. That's why he's in Egypt and Babylon. Works well in both environments. Am I my brother's keeper? Well, I'm not, but I am. Others' fields have I kept, but mine own I have not kept. Busybody, right? So, and you could say black body radiation is a version of that. You could call it busybody radiation, right? BB. Anytime you see a BB, that comes up a lot. A double B. We're getting into going from Nebuchadnezzar's giant to Goliath. And look at all the description of Goliath, right? Helmet of brass, target of brass between his shoulders, greaves of brass, these protecting arm protections and shin protections, maybe even thighs. Okay, he had a weaver's beam spear, big, long, the thing was huge. And the head of the spear was made of iron. And there were very specific numbers used in describing Goliath. It was covered in chainmail. All right, and there were numbers involved in this stuff. Okay, these are all astronomical numbers. So things in the Bible describe things quantum physics related, astronomy related, genetic related. But the genetics, like I say, they may not have had the full grasp of the microscopy at the small level we understand it at, the organic level. They probably mastered it at the astronomical level. They understood the spiral of the solar system, the spiral of the galaxy. They understood the night sky and the day sky, how things are different. Okay, and one represents one side of the DNA and this represents the other, and then these rungs of the ladder coming across. They understood the Great Pyramid. They call it Sisera in the book of Judges. Deborah fought against Sisera. Sisera is the northern side. I always say the northern side of the king's chamber. That's wrong. It's actually the north side of the queen's chamber and the king's chamber, but they're opposed. They're like a scissor, whereas the south side is like an equal sign. So you got to understand that there's a male alpha side to this queen's chamber, just like there is the king's chamber, and there's also a beta version on the south facing side. Right, this is the alpha, this is the beta. Okay, very important thing. And sometimes I've been calling it the crisscross pattern of the king's chamber. That's really wrong for me to say that, but I've been saying it's wrong so long. Sometimes that will get by me, so don't fall for that. But anyway, Goliath represents the second of the two giants that are spoken about. And I call the metal man a giant because I believe it was. I believe when Nebuchadnezzar had that dream, he saw this thing that was just monstrositous. This great king was quaking, like, oh my God. I like to take myself back and pretend, man, if I had been Nebuchadnezzar, one of the meanest guys ever on the planet. Like, it just goes to show you that these alpha kings, they're really scared inside. All these Satanists, Satan's going to take over God's throne someday, and the devil, and they're throwing devil signs. Like, I say, if they ever met the real devil, they would leave a P mark down the sidewalk. All these people that are tatted up, man, and they're spiked hair, and they're goth, and they're dirty, or whatever. I laugh. I go, these people have no idea if they ever met pure evil. Okay? And most of them have never had an experience where they almost lost their lives because they would ditch that bullshit like that. And it happens the opposite way. People that think they know God, when they run into God, They lose their religion. Every once in a while, I'll listen to REM. I'm losing my religion. Don't really care for the song. Do care about the concept. Because it is true, you can lose your religion. People think, oh man, I got to push towards the Holy of Holies. Man, you don't want to go there. You don't really want to meet God. They say never meet your heroes. It's true. If you really met the austere God that God is, the God that is so cold that Lucifer is literally scared shitless of God. So all these Christians that talk about, oh, God's, it's though I've never sinned, and they're walking on water these days, holier than thou, so heavenly minded, no earthly good, can't relate to their own people anymore. All Catholics are going to hell. They're super Protestants, right? I just laugh. I go, man, if they're real bad, you better say a prayer for them, because they have no idea what they're about to experience. You run into the real God of the Bible, man. It is a eye-opening, mind-opening experience, and it's not for the faint-hearted. So always remember, you are in the center. You're never their buddy on either end. Say, oh, I'm Satan's buddy, man. No, you're not. And it goes the opposite way. You think you're God's buddy? No, you're not. You better wake up to this, because it hit me several times in my life. I came very close to getting smoked like a cheap cigar because I got too big for my britches. So, but you can't do great things. I like that movie Whiplash, the kid learning drums. Sometimes you break a few eggs to make an omelet, and it's not an easy process. It takes, to get you this work, to get you that temple graphic, you have no idea. That is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of man hours and woman hours too, because I had family members that worked tirelessly on this and had to redo everything all over again. Change this, change that, and they were like exasperated, wanting to kill me at the worst time in their life, fighting other things in their lives, took time out to get this right, to bring it to you. So when somebody brings you a graphic, you look at it and you go, well, I could do better. I challenge you, please do. I'm hoping and praying people show me all the flaws in my system. And I know I made some. If you look at the temple graphic, I designed both west and east sides with the Ark of the Covenant. Both east and west ends with an altar of incense, what I call the AI or the IA. One side you'll notice is David hit Goliath in the forehead with the stone. That should have been actually on the other end. Okay, I made mistakes, but I had a lot of things going on. I'm not making excuses. When it comes to the Bible, you should have it right. You absolutely, there's no excuses. Okay, I got several things wrong. All right, I got the shewbread under the lamp, which is actually, they call it the candlestick, but the big one. Not the 7 candlesticks, but the actual oil lamp. I put it underneath. I was in a rush, and I'm like, well, I know one is on the north side and the other's on the south side. Well, the candlestick was on the south side, and the shewbread table was on the north side. All right? But if you think about it, this is what you're looking at. All right? And this is why I did what I did on that temple graphic. I did it to get you drilled into your head. You're not looking at a piece of paper, dude. You're looking at a spun up carbon gyro with multiple gimbal rings. Okay? Once you get that concept, I've done my job. Did I get everything right? No. No, there's mistakes. I can show you one right now. This is my lamp, which represents the candlestick, the oil lamp. These center ones are under the branches. On here, you see them in the center, but they're actually each level. All right. So where does that put this fourth one? Because there were 4 on the center line. I don't know. Good luck with that one. But if this one's underneath, this one's underneath, this one's underneath, then there might have been 2 on the bottom. Don't know. Okay. So could have been in the roots. Nobody knows where that fourth one went. Could have been the star, like the Christmas tree. We put the star on the top. Could have been there. That is a mystery. By the way, I got two of them. Because this is actually more of a olive tree. If you look at is it an olive tree? No, almond tree. I'm sorry, almond tree. But the reason I did it straight across and bent is to show you something so that you'll understand technically what you're looking at is the triangle of the Great Pyramid. That comes up a lot in the temple design. Okay. So the 3, 6, and 9, lithium, carbon, fluorine, fine structure constant, F, S, which is Li, and C. Right, that 3, 6, 9 reveals itself several times with niobium, molybdenum, and technetium, praseodymium, neodymium, and promethium. Okay, this is the 2 olive trees that stand before God, who are technetium and samarium, the 2 elements not naturally found, which are Enoch and Elijah. Enoch was taken away from the earth at 365 years of age. Gee, that's an interesting number. Do you think Enoch represents Earth? Of course he does. It's based in astronomy. Okay, it's very technical. And it actually contains the fine structure constant of the universe, 1 divided 138 times. It's encoded in known as the well at Bahurim. It represents the lanthanide and actinide series, which were underneath the surface. It's the lower second and third stories of Noah's Ark. The window and a cubit above is the center line, which is the 3, 6, and 9, which represents your 1 and your 0. Your Adam, your Eve, your good and God versus your Shiva and evil and devil. So the reason you see the 7 candlesticks, the center one has 2 candles on it. Is that how it's portrayed in the Bible? No. That is showing you a specific thing. Okay? And when you get outside the temple, you see the graphics on each side, the 5, 6, and 7. Those are the lengths of the priestly cells, which were classrooms. You see a spiral, okay? A 2 to 3 and a 3 to 2. One's clockwise, one's counterclockwise. That's what those spirals represent. They always represent the rotation of the earth as seen from north, as seen from south, as seen from the patriarchy, as seen from the matriarchy. And the weirdness of the belt, which is why Orion's belt is not only the vertical, but it's the horizontal, because it represents your north, south, and east, west. Those 3 stars can form, they can go from this to this. This is quadruped, this is biped. Quadrupedal, bipedal. It's another way to describe that. Oh, the beast stood upon 2 feet. His wings were plucked up, and he was given the heart of a man. Gyro spinning up. Northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. Rotating storm clockwise, rotating storm counterclockwise. And people are like, oh, well, that's not always true. Hey, if you're looking for perfection, you might want to try Mars. You might want to try, like, Neptune. Because here on Earth, you have there's a lot of give and take. If you're looking for perfection, my friend, you might want to check Neptune. You might want to go to Mercury. I don't know where to look, but it ain't down here. Now, we can get to a high degree of probability here. Even quantum physicists admit this. That's why they use probability statistics in their math, because they understand that you have to go with, to make it a laminar flow, you better use this system. So if you look at my graphics and you're finding all these flaws and think you can do better, please show me what you got. This work is going to need a lot more work, but you're getting in on the ground floor, which is a great place to be. You can tell your grandkids, man, I remember when that stuff came out. That blew my mind. Oh, and something I want to bring out about the Sea of Brass. The Sea of Brass, I have the bulls facing out, the 12 bulls underneath that held it up. And on one, they're facing in. And I call these the stator and rotor. of an electric motor. So the armature can spin in the center, or the center can stay stationary and the outside can spin. Okay? So if you look at Ed's device that Mr. Russell spins, okay, he had the stationary magnets on the outside and the center part spun. Okay, but it can work the same way. They work either way. So those bulls, when you hear David lamenting in the book of Psalms about the bulls of Bashan that compassed him round about, and David used that term a lot. But this sea of brass, in one depiction, it's Jacob's trough where the animals are facing in, and Jacob put those peeled branches from a chestnut tree, a hazel tree, and one other, green poplar. Okay, and this gets into breeding of humans, green eyes, brown eyes, and they believe a genetic, they call it a defect, is where blue eyes came from. They first showed up in Spain. The eye color was very key. The hazelnut tree or hazel tree, green poplar, and the chestnut. Chestnut's obviously brown. Okay. Well, this program that Jacob used for cattle, God used on us. So Jacob is a type of God. And these depictions that I have, they get into where David talks about the bulls of Bashan, and the king of Bashan was Og. We call Og a caveman these days. But the Israelis the ancient Israelis under Joshua killed Og, and they took his stuff. And his bed was 9 by 4. Okay, and they said 9 cubits, so that's roughly, 18 inches. So this guy was big, and his bed was made of iron. So if you go 9 by 4, that's 36 total. Now you can look at the temple and say that is the noble gases, and what's the last one called? Ognesium. Interesting. This king's name was what? Og? Wow. But I don't think Ognesium is Og. I believe he's Krypton. And I've been rolling the numbers around why that is, and the number 10.9 keeps coming up. And it comes up more than once. And it comes up in the description of, I believe, Goliath. And that 10.9 is a very interesting number. I'm going to log it in my brain and say, And I've actually seen the number 12.9 show up too. So the reason I believe Og was Krypton is because he's associated with iron, and iron and Krypton are on the same. In the periodic table, you got your vertical and a horizontal. Your vertical are your periods. That is why I believe. And if you look, like I have a graphic of Jacob laying in his bed, that's also Og laying in his bed. Jacob is a type of Og laying on his bed. And it represents, you single out the periodic table, just take the one that we use to teach our children. And that looks just like a bed. So the Bible record is saying that they knew about this. They understood Jashan and Boaz. You take the periodic table, single it out, reverse the image and put it together. You get a pillar or the cup. And we call it the Holy Grail, but you could call it Pharaoh's cup. Okay? It's the cup from Joseph's dream. The butler squeezed grapes into Pharaoh's cup. Joseph said, put my cup in the younger brother's backpack or mule, the sacks that were on the mule, the younger brother Benjamin. And then he sent his guards out to bring him back. And he said, whoever's bags I find that cup in, I'm going to kill him, or I'm going to put him in my dungeon. And it was his brother. Joseph and Benjamin were actual blood brothers. The rest were stepbrothers through the other mother. They were all brothers, but they were all from Leah. Only Joseph and Benjamin were from Rachel. And he was messing with them because he knew Benjamin was the baby of the family, and Jacob, the father, would have had a fit. So he played a mean trick on them, but they deserved it. Okay. So you see how it's like a theme throughout the Bible of people playing tricks on each other. Jacob the supplanter. But Joseph's brothers did that to Joseph. But Joseph got them back. You see how this goes back and forth? That's the battle between Adam and Eve, the patriarchy and matriarchy. And everybody's caught in the middle. Once you wrap your brain around that, you begin to get, hey, the universe is balancing itself. Yep, that's how it works. I could get into the Gen 49 Zodiac, but I'm not gonna. But we're gonna leave that right here for now. So we'll end the episode, and I thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to you tuning in to our next few episodes, where we're going to get into, on the next one, I'll go over a quick overview, which is the graphic that has the zodiac, but I took Jacob's children, 12 sons and 1 daughter, and I get into, I've already touched on some of it, but I want to get into the main 2, which is Simeon and Levi, and how instrumental, and I'm using that term purposely, pun intended, okay, because Jacob talked about the instruments of their cruelty. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. Get into the minutia of what he's talking about there. And we're going to leave it there, and I thank you for tuning in. All right, well, that concludes today's episode, where we went over the design of the temple graphic and the fine details of it and why I chose to do things the way that I did. So the next episode is going to be a follow-up video on that, because we kind of ran out of time today. So we'll just kind of stay on that subject matter for the next video. Thank you for tuning in.